What's up, summoners? King Blair here. With the expedition update, it has become more important that you get your expedition level 3s ready so you are not leeching from your friends and you can add stronger players and get these new substat change stones that are so good and will make your units a lot more spicy. So what we're going to be doing today and over the next week is going to be doing guides on all level 3 expedition auto teams so you're able to easily auto these and be able to be on your way to becoming a better player. So if you like the video and are excited for the other ones, make sure you like, subscribe, and join the Discord server. Link down in the description. And make sure you subscribe to be notified when the next ones drop for the other 2 expeditions that we'll be doing after the fire one. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Before we go over the mechanics and the units and the team building, I do want to say first the mentality as you go coming into this. You need to have a strong guild or strong friends that can also put in the work. You don't have to be someone that solos these expeditions. Just being someone that is able to do 300k damage is more than enough. As you see here, the person who posted this expedition didn't even have to enter and we were easily able to clear it, even though people weren't necessarily doing like insane amount of damage to it, right? So it is extremely important that you just come in with these with the mentality that you don't have to solo the boss on your own, but you are going to have to do your fair share, which in this scenario is going to be around 350 to 400k damage, which is actually really easy now that they have changed a lot of the different stuff. So with that out of the way, let's get to the boss mechanics. I am going to put timestamps for all the different things and show examples of everything I'm talking about. Then we'll talk about all the different teams you can use. You don't have to use my team. I usually do use Danny over Tema, but this is an option that I wanted to show. But we'll be talking about all the other teams, and then I'll show you guys an example of my actual expedition run as well as the gear that I have on the expedition units, so you guys can see that it doesn't require the most insane gear to do your fair amount of contribution. But enough about the setup, let's get to the actual video. Now, as far as the boss mechanics, for the main one, you essentially have 7 turns before the boss just wipes your party. Essentially, this is going to be when he uses his ultimate for the 3rd time. Another very important aspect of the boss mechanics is going to be the enhanced element aspect of it. What this means is that if you're using ice heroes, you'll do an extra 50% damage to the boss, which is quite significant. But if you're not of the ice element, you will take extra damage, making non-ice heroes have to be tankier to tank the boss properly. The other mechanic you need to know is going to be the different phases. During the offensive phase, the opponent will have increased attack and your whole team will be silenced. You need to hit him 6 times in order to get to the next phase before he takes his next turn, or the counter will reset. During this time, your CR pushing skills will have an extra 300% pushing to it. So if Luna boosts by 15% with her EE, she will not be able to push up by 45%, and all other units are like that as long as it's on their S1s. The way the boss gets to this phase is by utilizing the S3, which essentially is an AoE attack that strips your team of buffs and applies the silence, and you need to hit him the 6 times starting from this. This skill does start off cooldown, so he'll be able to use it on turn 1 and put you in this phase. In this phase, you need to try to get the 6 hits. When you start the fight, it is not as imperative to get this because your Cross should be able to take an enhanced frontline hit, but your Luna CR push should be able to set up. As you see there, the Luna is going to be 45% to be able to set up for the future, even though I did get lucky with the dual attacks. The Cross should have survived and the Luna should be able to put the damage. Now in the second phase, it is going to be a lot easier to get him out if you have a CR pushing unit. As you see here with Luna, she's easily able to push forward, get those turns because of the passive, get the damage, cycle through, and get him out of the phase, which is why CR pushing units are so important in this boss fight. As far as the other skills, the S1 that we talked about, it's a frontline hit that does quite a significant amount of damage. When it's in the offensive phase, it'll only be a very strong smack, which is why it's okay at the beginning to receive this hit. Later on, if it doesn't have it, it will attack twice, as we'll see here. So since he's not in the offensive phase, he does end up doing the S1 twice, and it does really good damage to my front line. The S2 is an AoE skill that decreases speed, which is very annoying and can make you lose a lot of turns, especially if the boss uses it before setting up for the ultimate, since the slowdown is for 2 turns. This skill is also AoE and will do quite a lot of damage if you don't have non-water units. Now let's talk about team compositions and some of the units that you can fit into these roles to be able to clear Fire Expedition 3 auto with success. So the units are going to be placed from best to just okay units. They still can definitely work. Now, these aren't going to be all the options that you have available to you, but it is a very good list of a place to start that you can definitely use, and it'll be really easy for you to fill the different slots. So make sure you're listening to when I talk about each role if you have another unit in mind that I may have missed. So as always, with the team composition, you're going to need a frontline tank that can tank the boss, a support unit, a DPS, and a debuffer. Your frontliner ideally should be a water knight. Why? The boss does extreme amount of damage. My Kral is almost always dying in this, and he's a decently tanky Kral, and he's the water element, so he's not taking that extra damage from the boss. So it is going to have to be a water knight. Although if you haven't seen gear, maybe you can try something else. But from best to okay, first, the best one is going to be Rose. Rose is just going to be able to put up that attack buff super often and give defense buff to herself, allowing her to tank effectively. She also does have a barrier that allows you to push up your units and make it so you don't take as much damage from the boss, and it's just overall a lot of support. So overall, Rose, very, very good. The EE that you would use on her is the one that lowers her S3 cooldown, so that you can always have attack buff up and you can constantly push your CR team forward. She's probably the best knight for this expedition. The second knight, and a little bit more of a defensive knight, is going to be Kral. Kral has the best defensive stats out of all the other knights, and he also has the defense buff on the S2, and of course the S3, if he drops below 30%, or 50%, sorry, he will do a lot of damage. So Kral being very defensive and being able to hold Arius quite easily in case you do need that. And Tywin, an option. If you don't have any other units, Tywin is also not the worst. He's able to apply a decreased defense. He can give attack buff and crit rate buff to an ally, as well as give attack buff and defense buff to himself, making him a little bit tankier and making it easier for him to survive in this expedition. So definitely not a bad option and something you can definitely use. And in some scenarios, maybe even better than a Rose, since he's able to set up a decreased defense that you normally don't have access to with Rose as in the front line. Now, as far as the support and the buffer, ideally you have someone that can give you attack buff to support and can also cleanse the slow debuff or prevent it from happening. So of course the best one being Tama. Even though she's not a water unit, the 50% CR push that she has, as well as attack buff, as well as the dual attack chance with your highest attack ally, are just absolutely invaluable. She'll be able to get you so much damage, and for the aggressive teams, she's going to be the best option. Her with Rose, it's just attack buff all day, damage all day. Her heals aren't insane, but they should be enough to support you in the fight. Another good option is Diani. One thing that Diani does have is you need someone that can CR push up. So if you don't have any DPS, and the DPSs that I put here are primarily the ones that can CR push themselves, but if you don't have that, you can just use a Diani and she should be able to fill the role of a CR pusher, and you can set another water unit that might not have put for the DPS, such as someone like a Kisei that can do high single target damage. Diani can fill the role of CR pushing herself and being able to get you out of that phase while also giving attack buff, while also cleansing with the S2. That is all very, very, very good stuff. And then the next one is going to be Montmorency. Montmorency being able to cleanse your team quite easily. Very, very good. Very, very nice at keeping your team alive. Angelica being able to set up the immunity, large amount of heals. The best one for just keeping your team alive. Typically, you will need a support unit unless you're going for a full team that's just going ham and trying to get as much damage as possible at the beginning. Then, moving forward, we have the DPS CR pusher. This is going to be the unit that is going to be doing the highest DPS, and ideally also has a form to CR push to abuse the mechanic of the 300% increased CR push that the boss has, because this way they can get more attacks in during that phase that the CR push is pushed up, so they can do extra damage. The best one in this role going to be Luna, because she's going to be one of the highest single target DPS unit, and the extra damage that she does to the boss because she's water is just absolutely invaluable, making Luna the best one since she can CR push, she can do damage, she basically does everything, and you can even give her a little bit of effectiveness so she can land that decreased defense if you really want it. Another good free-to-play option, although it does require investment, is Commander Lorena. It will require you to have her 6-star so she can survive the high damage that the boss will do to her since she is not of the water element. She can CR push and she can do a lot of damage to bosses with her passive and just really, really good single target damage. The other one is going to be Chu. Her damage is not as high as the other two, but she can CR push herself up. She can also support your team a little bit, and she still has some pretty good damage, and she's getting the buff, so she should be able to do a little bit more damage as well. Moving forward, we also have Chloe. This one's going to be one that does not have a CR push for herself, but is going to be a very high single target damage dealing unit that is also water, which makes her perfect for the role, but you will have to supplement with things like a Diani, or a Terran or Guard that can clear that phase that has the silence in it. Then you have Shuri, who is also a fire unit, so you'll need to be tanky, but he can CR push your whole team up during the phase of the Fire Expedition boss, and he can pretty much support your team quite nicely and do pretty good damage, even though he's not of the water element. Now, as far as the debuffers, typically you want someone that can decrease defense and help round out anything that you had left on your team. For this roles, we have Luluka, who can decrease defense on a single target damage attack. She's probably the best one for this because with the EE that allows her to hit twice, it's just invaluable to have that decrease defense up all the time, and the damage that she can apply for a debuffer is very, very high, making Luluka really, really good. Not as consistent since the debuff is not 100%. Terran Norgard can CR push units up, can do damage, and can decrease defense, making him perfect as a debuffer and a support. Seaside Bellona, if you have access to Miss Confile and you build your Seaside for PvE, she can actually be insanely good because she has several ways to decrease defense with the S1 with Miss Confile and the S2 as well. Misty Chan, while not many debuffs, she can actually heal your team, so provide a little bit more healing if you decide to go with more of an aggressive team, trying to go get as much damage as possible and without as much heals. And then of course we have Karen, who's also really good single target DPS. Her decreased defense is only going to be for one turn, but she does cycle it decently fast and can do some pretty good damage, making her a pretty good contender for this role. So that's going to be all the team compositions that you can have, that you can function. There are, as far as the teams and combinations that you can use, Rose, Tama, Luna, and Luluka is probably going to be the strongest that you can use for this expedition, and it'll easily get very high. The one I personally use is Kra, Diani, Luna, and Luluka. Again, you don't have to have the best ones, the best team for you to do all the damage that you need. Some other options, of course, you can always do Rose, Momo if you're having trouble surviving, maybe a Commander Lorena if you don't have Luna, and then on the last one you can have a Terran Norgard to apply those consistent decreased defenses and the CR pushing, right? So there's a lot of options that you have that you can do, but once you build the units, you don't need insane levels of gear. All you need on your debuffers is 85% effectiveness, and your DPSs, they just need to do DPS, and your tanks just have to be able to survive the boss for the 7 rounds. So nothing super crazy, and you can definitely do it, but that's it for the team composition portion. So here is my personal Fire Expedition Team 3. The stats for all the units that I use here will be in the next section if you do want to see them. So as you see there, the Diani does take the first turn with the S3. Mainly I lead this and I don't mind too much because it does give me a very early attack boost to the bosses. You see there, I already started with almost 100k. I'm a third way of the way there. Also, the thing that doesn't matter is because as you saw there, Diani took 2 turns since she does get that increased CR push. So she'll be able to get the S3 quite easily, so I'm not too worried. Here he does the S2, and I'll be able to have the S3 back up. The boss goes into the Crawl, does significant damage. Again, having a tanky unit such as Crawl is very, very good. Luna being the DPS, Luluka here lands the decreased defense, which is very nice because it's only 50%. So it's a very good run for me so far. I'm doing great. I'm not even past the first phase. Boss has the decreased speed. Diani should have the S1 here, and the next time she comes around, she'll have the S2 to cleanse the speed debuff right before the boss takes the extra phase. So as we keep going through, we see that the Luna does do the big S1, does the damage. Diani cleanses the speed down, so we're able to set up right before the second phase of the attack phase. He strips our buffs, sets us up, but the Luna is right there. We'll get big CR push. Diani will get big CR push, so I'm not too worried about getting out this phase out of the 6 hits. And you see we do tons of damage with Luna and Diani before we go into the phase. At this point, I could honestly just quit the expedition. I already did my work in the expedition. Everyone else should be able to clear. My guildies, my friends should be able to clear at this point. As you say there, they're clearing quite fast. So I just keep doing damage because why not? See how far my team can actually go. And we keep going. The boss again with this with the speed down. Usually the first time through the expedition, he'll start the battle with hitting the S1. But the next time he does the ultimate, it'll be the S2 after the offensive phase. So you do need to clear it, unlike the first one. So as far as the units you guys saw on my expedition team, you guys will see that there's nothing super special about them. They're just units that I slapped on some gear and it happened to work. Here's my Luna. She's only at 185 speed. Ideally, of course, to be faster so that the slow debuff doesn't affect my turn order that drastically. The health is there so she doesn't drop below 50%. That's also why the Sigurd Scythe is there. In case she does drop below 50%, she can heal back up and get that crit rate passive. She barely has the 85% minimum crit rate requirement to be able to crit on the Fire Expedition boss. As you guys know, she gets 30% from her passive, 50% for being water. Critical hit damage and attack, nothing crazy, but needs to be able to survive, not be one shot by the boss's AoE skills, and be able to still do decent damage. Nothing reforged, and the only thing that I reforged was this helmet. That is on a unit that I just haven't found another PvP unit to use, so she's just holding it for me, right? So nothing crazy. Then as far as the Krau being the better defensive knight, as we mentioned, he is on Aureus to help my team not drop below 50% for Luna, and for my Luluka to be able to survive and not have to worry just in case the boss decides to crit every single time. Pretty standard Krau, mostly for PvP. For a PvE one, you would not need the effect resistance. You can easily drop the speed and add more tank and get these tank stats. If you are not able to clear the first 6 on the first rotation like I did because I used Diani, you can easily use a Krau on artifacts that will lower the damage that he takes, such as a Proof of Valor or something like the Sword of Ersera, which reduces damage from bosses, right? So very easy. If your Krau's not surviving, there are ways to help it. You just lose that on the Aureus passive for the rest of your team, which means your team will have to be a little bit tankier if you decide to not use Aureus, or make your Krau tankier, one of the two. Then of course the Luluka that you guys saw, this is the only unit I strictly built for this hunt. My Luluka is a little bit above average. I did give her this Unity set just for herself, and I did reforge one because I had extra mats. This one, again, is a leftover piece that I had that I couldn't find a PvP unit to use, so I slapped it on Luluka. But again, not maxed out, not max Mola, right? Definitely not max Mola, but at least maxed Awaken. You see she's only at +3. And then last but not least, my PvP Diani. Again, she doesn't need this F-Rest if you're using it for somewhere else. Again, not even reforged. Speed is not that crazy. Just very, very, very standard Diani. Nothing crazy, not even reforged. You can easily get these stats and you can easily go on your way. So hopefully this shows you that you don't need insane stats to be able to clear Expedition level 3s. So that is all I have for you guys today. Hopefully this guide really helps you build the best expedition teams that you can. Again, don't be stressed. All you need is 400k damage to do your minimum contribution. If you're able to do more, which you should easily be able to do, that's great. If you're not, that's fine. Hopefully your friends and your guildies are strong enough that with all the contributions, you should easily be able to clear it with like 350 to 400k damage per person. But that is all I got for you guys today, and I will see y'all next time. Peace.